Hello and welcome back. So my primary ship for the last 2 weeks was the Arbitrator Covert, a tier 7 force recon cruiser, and this is also classified as a tactical cruiser. Now, I did use this ship for PvE and for PvP. It was my primary ship for storyline missions, and I did manage to do tier 8 storylines with this ship. Now I'll be quickly looking at the ship's characteristics again. From the last video that I did with this ship, I did change the fittings, and of course this time I did also improve my skills. My drone range is at around 66 kilometers, and soon it will be at around 75 kilometers. That will technically allow me to do tier 10 storyline missions with this ship. Now, from the rest of the tier 7 Covert cruisers, this ship does have the highest DPS bonus, and it uses drones as its primary source of DPS, and that makes this ship a perfect PvP ship. Now, these are force recon ships, and most of them can be used to scout enemy territory, or they can be used to follow and spy on the enemy fleets. Now, here I'll be just looking at the other Covert cruisers, and from all of the other cruisers that we do have here, the next one that is slowly going to catch my attention is definitely the Bellicose Covert. It does have a target painter effect, and target painters are going to be introduced into the game very soon. Of course, we are also going to get the bubble, and of course we are going to get the scrambler in the game, which will be very interesting. Now, as you can see here, the Arbitrator Covert does have the highest DPS bonus from all of the other tier 7 Covert ships, and for PvP and of course for PvE it is indeed a very good ship. Now, my primary weapons here in the high slots are still the decomposers. They do have very high alpha damage, and I do like to use these weapons. They're excellent at repelling frigates. If any frigate gets too close to the ship, they can be ready to take a massive 1000 volley. Now, as for the medium slots, I do have a medium Nosferatu combined with a interruptive stasis webifer, and of course I do have a interruptive warp disruptor. So this is a PvP fit. Of course, I could replace the Nosferatu with another web, and that would work very nice as well. I do have Mark 7 Valkyries, and I do have Mark 7 Infiltrators as my medium drones. In the low slots I do have a dual drone damage amplifier, a Covert cloaking device, and I do have a faction micro warp drive. Now quickly to demonstrate the DPS of this ship and of course its speed. Now this ship is also very fast. I do like its velocity, and at the moment I do have 443 DPS, and its velocity is almost 1.9 kilometers per second, which is very nice, and I can improve the numbers further on. Now, if you remember last time when I was doing the tier 8 storyline mission with this ship, I did change my fit into a armor fit for the second part, and this is the finished armor fit for this ship that I think will work very nice. This is the fit that I'll be using for the tier 8 storyline missions very soon. Now, the point with this fit is to survive the approach to the enemy ships, to launch drones at the enemy target, and then to run away at 240 kilometers from the main target, because this fit will allow you to take a couple hits, but after that you will have to retreat, and you will have to wait out for the repairer to repair the damage done to the armor, and of course to wait out the capacitor to fully recharge. But so far the fit is going to withstand the first couple hits from the tier 8 elite cruisers until you approach them to the maximum drone control range, and then you launch drones at the target, and of course after that you run away at 240 kilometers from the main target, and that should allow you to survive in the tier 8 storyline missions with this ship. And of course I will be demonstrating that in one of the next videos, where I'll be running tier 8 storylines with this ship using this exact fit. Now, as for PvP, there are a couple problems that you might encounter with this ship. First problem is the cloak targeting delay. After the ship uncloaks, you will have to wait 30 seconds before you can lock on to any targets. And in my case, that's what caused that ship to escape. But of course, after that, since I am in a fleet, we are hunting in nullsec, and of course, we did get lucky a couple times, as you will see in the next part over here. So it is very important to note that the cloak reactivation targeting delay is going to be a problem, and that is literally the only problem that I do have with this ship. 30 seconds is just too much. If it were 5 seconds, it would be perfectly fine, but it is unfortunately 30 seconds. So if you uncloak, you will have to warp out and then uncloak and then warp in, and you will be back just in time for the delay to disappear. So the first target here is this destroyer. It is one of the new faction destroyers, and I have to admit, this ship that I'm currently shooting is very tanky, and it is fitted for shield tank, as it should be, because these ships do tank shield and hull. But the Mark 7 drones and of course my allies over here do massive amounts of damage to that ship, and that ship will be down in a couple seconds. Just keep an eye on how fast the armor and hull will just disappear on that destroyer. Okay, and the ship lost its shields and the ship is destroyed. Well, that's the first kill. Now that interceptor did attack me, and I don't know what that interceptor is thinking. It is interesting to note that my arbitrator at the moment is almost as fast as a interceptor. It is almost going 2 kilometers per second, and I did approach that target. I did go to use my weapons and of course my drones, and as soon as my drones arrived at the target, the interceptor just cannot withstand the massive amounts of damage that these drones do. And of course the teammates are also doing a very good job at shooting down the targets. Okay, well, that was the second kill. It was a Condor 2 interceptor. Okay, sorry for the weird cut. Well, now we are waiting, and well, that Condor did have a faction shield booster, but that faction shield booster did not save the ship from the incoming drone damage. Now, the good thing about these Covert ships is the cloaking device, because it will allow you to cloak, and you can survive some very dangerous situations with a cloaking device. Okay, that's a prototype that warped in, a Battlecruiser. Now here I shouldn't have clicked on the warp, because I do have the cloak on and I should have warped off, then I should uncloak and then I should have warped in. But we are going to try to catch that prototype. Now, and the fleet commander did order a warp command, and in this case I should have stayed, because I do have the range that Battlecruiser cannot catch me, and that Battlecruiser cannot target my drones. So I should have stayed, but unfortunately the fleet commander did give a warp command, and I didn't have enough time to stop the ship from warping. Now this ship does have very decent range, 66 kilometers with the drones. That will allow me to stay away from the main target, and of course that will allow me to avoid all incoming damage. Now I warped in cloaked. Of course that is kind of a mistake, but I don't know what I will find when I warped in. And well, in this case I did find a prototype. Now the prototypes are interesting because they need at least 2 warp disruptors on them to prevent them from warping off. And we do have, well, there we go, one prototype. The prototype did warp out. We did have 3, I think, or 2 interceptors, and they did have a problem because the prototype can lock on those ships very fast, and that prototype also does carry neutralizers, which is destroying their capacitors. So in this case, my ship is absolutely of help. And that's a Caracal warping in. Well, now here you will see the cloak reactivation delay at this job, because I'm not going to be able to lock on the target for the next 20 seconds. And 20 seconds is all they need to shoot down that Caracal. So I think I'll be missing on this target, but I was a moral support here because they do have a cruiser on their side. Well, actually we do have two other cruisers in the team, and that Caracal is destroyed. This was actually very nice, and we were kind of lucky. Of course, we can still improve on our organization, but it was fun, and we could have done better if I didn't make a couple mistakes. That prototype would be destroyed if I, of course, was closer and if I didn't have the cloak on at the time. So this is where the cloak reactivation kind of ruined the experience, but I do hope that in the future that gets patched into 5 seconds from 30 seconds. It would make the ship very fun and very lethal. But of course, the ship is still performing quite well, and I am quite satisfied with its PvP performance. Now, besides being a DPS, this is after all a recon ship, and recon ships are used to scout. In that fleet, I was also having a look on the hostile base, or should I say on the hostile station, and I was reporting their ships, and of course I was reporting the locations, and of course I was reporting the positions at which they were warping. Of course, that all comes into the job of a recon ship, and for that job this ship is performing quite well. Now, as for the PvE part and for the missions, I do use 2 Valkyries and 2 Infiltrators, a combination that I did want to try out to see how it will work. Of course, I do prefer to have 4 Valkyries because they are indeed very fast, and the Valkyries do decent amount of damage. Now, of course, all the drone damage is going to be the same, but I did notice that the Valkyries do a little bit more damage on the armors and hulls of these ships. That's why I like to use them the most. Now, as for my range, I did increase, and of course I did replace the drone rigs that I did have before, and now I have around 66 km drone control range, which is phenomenal, and I am very satisfied with that range. It will allow me to safely do tier 8s, it will allow me to do safely tier 10s very soon. For tier 10s I want to have at least 75 km range just to be safe, because I do remember that some of the elite battleships can hit at 68 kilometers. So in that case, having 75 kilometers or even 80 kilometers range is going to be a very helpful thing. Now, besides the Arbitrator Covert, I also did try out the Prophecy, and I have to admit, I kind of didn't like the Prophecy. I don't know why. I think the problem is I am too used to quick ships, and this ship is indeed very fast. It is very helpful to have that speed, because you can increase the distance between your ship and the enemy ship very rapidly. Now, with the Prophecy, you will rely on the ship's armor and of course on its resistances. In some cases that tank can be broken, and I know the Prophecy is using drones as its primary DPS, but somehow the DPS on this ship is a little bit outperforming the DPS on the Prophecy. In that case, I would choose the Arbitrator Covert Ops over the Prophecy. But of course, that is... I think personally that the Prophecy is not a ship for me. For some reason I don't know how to fly ships on a armor tank basis. I know how to fly shield tank ships very well, but armor tank ships are kind of I find them very clumsy, to be honest. And that means I need more practice in them. But at the moment I am flying the Arbitrator Covert Ops and the ship is doing a very good job. Now, the next storyline that I'll be attempting might be the Calvary storyline, I am not quite sure. I might also attempt the Metal one, it depends on the situation. But for those missions I will be changing my fleet into a armor tank, and of course I'll be still using my approach tactic, because that tactic is so far, it is proven to be one of the best drone tactics that I could come up with, and so far I am very satisfied with how that worked out in the end. Now, as you can see here, I am sniping these targets with my drones and I'm doing a very good job at it. I have to admit, drones have to be the most overpowered weapon in the game at the moment, because you can use them at any distance imaginable. If I could drop my drones on a target at, let's say, 60 kilometers, I can move away from the target to, let's say, 600 kilometers, and my drones would still be shooting that target. And that is kind of ridiculous, and that is kind of very ridiculous if I have to be honest. But that makes drones very useful for PvE, and of course very safe to use for PvE, because you can safely snipe the enemies instead of tanking all that incoming damage from these ships. And of course I have to say my internet connection is not the best. My internet connection is making tanking a lot more difficult, and that also has a tool on how I can't use armor tank ships for some reason. But in the vast majority of cases it is my own fault for not being able to fly the Prophecy properly. Of course I will give the ship a try, and of course I will be training more before I decide to do a video for that ship, because that ship is, in my hands, a little bit clumsy, I have to admit. For example, this ship in my hands is very lethal, and I can do tier 8s and tier 10s with it just fine, which will be very interesting to record. Now, of course, those missions are very long and I need some time to actually clear them. Okay, well, that Arbitrator is also slowly going down. Now, I didn't look at the Arbitrator bonuses, but I think the classic Arbitrator is also a very good ship. But the Covert Ops does have the Covert Ops module that gives it a major advantage over most ships. Now, speaking of the Covert Ops ships, the one that I think I'll be getting next is the Bellicose Covert Ops, especially because it does use missiles and it does have the target painter. That ship can be very dangerous, and of course I am not going to be using that ship for missions, because drones are just far more superior in missions than compared to missiles. But the Bellicose Covert Ops might be very good for PvP and of course for overall fleet support. And I will have to try that out very soon when we get target painter modules in the game, which will happen in the next updates. That's what I've heard at least. Okay, well, I think this is a tier 7 mission. Just a test to see if I can snipe these ships at 65 kilometers, and so far I can see that I can. The cruisers and frigates and of course the Battlecruisers cannot track my ship because they just do not have enough range. Now, of course, I can move away to 120 kilometers if I wish, but 65 kilometers in a tier 7 mission is just enough, and you should be safe from incoming enemy fire in this case. I have to admit, I do enjoy flying this ship a lot, and I think that I'll be flying this ship for a very long time. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that I'll be flying only one ship. I'll be flying the vast majority of ships that I do like. And of course, when I hit tier 9, I am definitely going to get the Arbitrator Covert 2. That ship is going to be a upgraded version over this one. But the first one will have always a special place here, because the first one is very, very effective and very efficient at everything that I did throw at this ship. Okay, let's see. That Battlecruiser does not have a good day. Now I have to say though, the ship's velocity is also a good selling point for this vehicle, because you can be very fast with it, and I can still be faster than I am at the moment. I still have to increase and I still have to change the velocity rigs that I do have on this ship. I need to change them into the level 2 and level 3 rigs. With those rigs, this ship can theoretically go at 2.5 kilometers per second, which is very fast. And of course, I can also improve my skills, but I think I do have the advanced cruiser command skill on level 5. I think I actually have that skill on level 5, I'm not quite sure. And I do have the advanced drone on level 4 or level 5. That did improve my drone range a little bit. And of course I can still change one more drone control range rig. That will give me at around 71-72 kilometer range. But of course I want to try out the ship with this fit that I currently have, because I think 66 kilometers is more than enough to have this ship. And of course this is the last Myrmidon of the first wave of this mission. So far the DPS output has been nice. I can theoretically improve the drone DPS, but I think having more range is more important in storylines, because DPS is going to be useless if I can't survive the incoming firepower of all of these enemy ships. That's why I do choose range over DPS, but of course maybe very soon I'll be getting a second Arbitrator Covert for PvP, and that ship might have full damage mods on it, because I think I can get around 700 DPS on this ship with ease. But of course that does require testing, and I will have to test that out as soon as I can. And hopefully that will be fun to do. Okay, well, the second wave of enemy ships has arrived, and let's orbit it. Now, the best drone DPS ship from, let's say, tier 7 or tier 6 has to be the Covert, has to be this ship, because it does give you very decent bonuses, and it does give you some very nice DPS. So I have to say, if I did have to recommend a tier 7 ship for drone DPS, it will have to be the Arbitrator Covert. I've been flying this ship, and it offers very good DPS, it offers very good speed, and it offers very good range. All of these three points are important for both PvP and PvE. A little bit more important for PvP, because you want to outmaneuver and outrange your enemies. In that way you will survive, because let's face it, the ship does not have a good tank, but it still is not fragile as it looks. It can take 1 or 2 hits before the need of warping out, but you're not going to have to warp out if you can outrange your opponents in both PvP and PvE, because if you do have superior range over the enemies and of course over the targets, then you are not going to take any incoming damage, which is important for a lot of situations. So in the end, I have to say this is one of the more practical and one of the more multi-purpose ships that I did fly so far. It can be used in fleets for DPS, it does have very decent DPS. It can be also used as a recon ship in fleets to spy on enemy fleets and of course to report enemy position in the system and of course to spy on enemy structures. And at the same time it can be used for PvE because it does have again good DPS, good speed and good range that will allow you to outrange most of the NPCs over here. So kind of a very good ship for a vast majority of situations, and it will be interesting to see if I can find another ship like this that can do the same job. But I think that will happen when I am tier 9 and when I get the tier 9 Arbitrator Covert ops, because at the moment I didn't find any ship that can replace this one in all of these three purposes. And of course that Myrmidon is going down. I orbit at 64-65 kilometers. I can orbit at 60, but in some cases the ship gets out of range because of my high ping, because of my bad internet connection, and usually in that case one drone does return, and in that case I have to reapproach to 65 kilometers, and of course I have to relaunch the drones at the target, which is not a bad thing necessarily. It is mostly my internet's fault for being too slow, and of course for having high ping. If you have good internet connection, you don't have to worry about that. But if you have internet like this internet I have here, then that might be a little problem. But in the end, it is not a deal breaker. And of course, in storylines, when you use the approach tactic, you are mostly going to be shooting down enemy ships with only 3 drones, because one drone will mostly be returning. Now, I don't know if that's a game bug or if that's just how the drone mechanic works, but I'll definitely be paying close attention to that, because I think that is also dependent on the skills a little bit. And the last Myrmidon is going down. Well, I have to say I do have lots of fun flying this ship, and of course this game is very fun to play. That fleet that I was at was good, and you can expect more PvP and more fleet PvP very soon. Next time I think we are going to be a lot more successful, because next time I am not going to be making the same mistakes that I did this time around. And of course, with that being said, this ship is one ship that I absolutely recommend to buy. It is an excellent multi-purpose ship, and it offers excellent all-around performance in any task that you can throw at it. Stay safe, fly safe, and I'll see you next time.